is y'all don't know anything about racing. This is true. You're right. You're in the wrong show.
Yeah.
You're watching the wrong show if you want to hear like super engineer stuff.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Hitting the Egg Packs. Fish here with my man Evan. How's it going, man?
What's going on, everybody? How we doing this evening?
Doing well. It is Chinese Grand Prix week. If you wonder where Jazz is, he has a meeting running long. We're hoping for his imminent arrival. Till then, we'll hold down the fort over here. So, Evan, what have you been doing since the I guess last week we recapped the previous race in Japan? So it's been going on since then.
Nothing much, just working normal stuff that everybody does in real life. You know, getting ready for this race this weekend, though, it's one of the tracks that I'm pretty excited for. This is one of those races that's been going on since 2004. It's a newer track. Yeah, they haven't had a race in like 4 years over there now, so it's going to be pretty good. I think it should be fun.
Yeah, shout out to the Sones family making an appearance. Evan's sister and mom. I got that. We'll see if Evan himself makes an appearance via his dad in a minute. But yeah, and we're gonna get into that a little bit because Pirelli raised some red flags about not really sure what tire compounds to bring because they hadn't. Ideally, this isn't a new track as you said, but they have not raced there since 2019. Obviously, COVID. Even worse in China. So they have not raced there in 5 years. So this new compound, this has happened over time, but they changed the compound of Pirelli tires. They changed the dimensions over the course of the last 5 years. So these tires have never run there. So normally when that happens, they do a test at the circuit so they can get a feel for how the rubber is going to react. They were unable to do that. So they went in a little blind here. But we're going to talk about that in a bit. As Evan mentioned, this is the Chinese Grand Prix, which is a race that the track is interesting. It's been a while since they've been out there, but Evan, I'd love to get your take on the. Wow, I just broke the thing sharing. We'll try again. Let's start with the track actually instead of the schedule. So, what is your take on this track? It is. The race is 56 laps, and it's about five and a half kilometers long. What's your overall take on this race, on this track?
It's a great track. A lot of the drivers like it, especially the drivers that have raced there. Obviously, there's quite a few drivers in the field now that have never raced on this track in these Formula One cars, because it hasn't been there since 2019. With the two DRS zones, they're kind of back to back if you kind of look at them. So detection for them is really interesting. If you get past somebody in that first DRS zone, they're going to detect you for the second one, or you can stay within the second one in the detection zone there. You're able to get past, right back past the driver just passed you down the start-finish line or the pit straight. That turn 1-2 combinations is, an iconic turn in Formula One, especially, for this particular track. It was designed by one of the guys that's designed, I think he designed Coda. He designed a few other of the tracks in Formula One right now that are some of the more popular for the drivers. That turn 7, 8, 9 S's is just as fun as Suzuka. From a lot of these drivers are saying, and a lot of the feedback is. One interesting fact I found out about this track is the shape of it is actually supposed to mimic the shape of the Chinese word Sheng for Shanghai. If you put up a copy of it, the way that turn 5 and 6 jets out and the way that turn 11, 12, and 13 jets out with that long straightaway, they designed it to actually mimic that that letter or that word in Chinese for Shanghai, which I think is kind of an interesting, little factoid of the track. It's something that's kind of cool. But like I said, very high speed between 7 and 8. Very one of the longer straights between turn 13 and 14, and I believe it's 1.2 kilometers for that long section there. So it's a fun track. Like I said, a lot of these drivers really enjoy it. You got the Max Verstappen talking very highly about it. You got Lewis Hamilton, I think, has 8 race wins, if I'm not mistaken here. So he's very successful at this track, and that might lead into a little thing later on that I might call out for a prediction. But yeah, like I said, I just think it's gonna be fun. How about you? What do you think about it?
Yeah, no. First of all, your dad did not disappoint. So shout out to Evan's dad as well. And yeah, no, one of the things you called out, which is I think really interesting, is this first sequence of turns. Like I said, it's iconic. You can't tell from a flat graph, but the grading there it falls away from you, so it's a very complicated, tricky series of turns with the grade of the circuit there, and coming out of the start of the race, there tends to be a bit of congestion there, so that's always interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing, I'm thinking that more of the overtaking is going to happen around the start finish straight. Just as you said, there are back-to-back DRS zones, and even though Sector 3, the one in Sector 3 between turns 13 and 14 is the longer, to me, if you're trying to overtake and make it stick, you use that to close up. There's a couple of short turns before the next straight, and you can stay on the gearbox and get a good run into the start finish straight and overtake into the first corner. I think is going to be the plan. But we'll see how that plays out. I know it's a fun start, so we haven't been here in a while, so it's definitely good to get back there. I did not know that factoid about it's shaped like spelling out Shang in Chinese. That's pretty cool. A very cool little factoid. It works for good racing too, so double win there.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so this is the schedule. Obviously, these Asia races that are not at night are a bit problematic from a sleep standpoint, but this is also the first sprint race of the year. So just let me walk through the schedule a little bit. So Thursday night here is the first practice. Friday early morning is the sprint qualifying, and then Friday late night is the sprint race itself, and then qualifying is early Saturday morning with the race early Sunday morning. If you want a better view of what the actual a normal sprint race going to look like, these are the times in China, and you can kind of see the Friday morning practice, Friday afternoon sprint qualifying, Saturday morning sprint race, Saturday afternoon qualifying, and then Sunday afternoon race is your more typical schedule. But again, with the offsets and on the other end of the world, we get some spillover into Thursday and the early morning stuff. Bevan, what are your overall? So this is the first sprint race of the year. How do you feel that impacts the dynamic? What do you like this format? I mean, there's now we were talking about this backstage before we went live, but the original sprint the original sprint format was you qualify for the sprint race, you would have the sprint race, and that would determine the order for the actual race. Now there's another qualifying in there. But what are your thoughts on not just this specific version of the format, but the sprint race as a total?
I like that changing, the concept of it or the order of everything, adding the qualifying in there. I think that's interesting that they're doing that. That they're kind of messing with it. I think that they could, mess with it a little bit more. I would have loved to have seen a situation of like a reverse grid or something like that. I think something like that would be really cool in Formula One. You see like Max Verstappen win the sprint race and then have to start from the back of the track for the actual race or something like that. I mean, I don't think it would ever happen in Formula One. Maybe Formula 2 could do something like that. But overall, I kind of like the fact that they have an extra qualifying in there. It makes it to where if there's a situation of, maybe when you go into that sprint race, you see something about your car that you can take advantage of for qualifying, or you see something going on that you can change that setup in the 3 hours. I think that they open up Parc Ferme after the sprint race to allow you to make those changes to go into qualifying, which is something that I think that it'll be very interesting going into it and seeing how that works out. But overall, realistically, for this race and this particular track, I'm not sure how it is. There's been a couple comments from a couple of the drivers, Max Verstappen included, talking about how this might not have been the best race to put a sprint in, just because they don't know what's going to happen with these cars. They've never raced at this track with this new generation of car. They've never, been here with, the rain and everything that might happen this weekend, with how the tires are going to react. They're going into this race really blind. So realistically, they could have probably put this on a different track. I know the next sprint is down here at the Miami Grand Prix. So, they've already done races here before. So, they kind of know this track already and how these cars react to this track. But being that this is at a track that they haven't been since 2019 and, nowhere near been with this generation of car, I think it's going to be kind of difficult. I think you're going to see some fireworks happen. It might make for some great, racing for us to watch, but for the drivers, it might make it kind of difficult. But overall, I like the sprint format. I think it's something that mixes things up, just maybe not here.
Yeah, and Max actually talked about that a bit and saying, they tweaked the format as we talked about, and doing it for the first time at a track they haven't been at in 5 years might not be the best idea. In terms of things like reverse grids, I don't know. I think it's easy, and when we all know Max is going to win the championship, to say that'd be interesting. I mean, that could, if it was 2021 and it came down to like the last lap of the last race and you had points distributed because they reverse gridded something that decides the championship, I don't think you'd want that. I think we tend to get these more creative solutions when there's a team dominating. Like, how do we make something interesting? Because, it would be cool to see Max start in last and probably still win the race by the end of it, to be honest, because he's winning by that many laps. He's winning by that much time. But, like, if it's actually a competitive championship, you would hate to see it. Oh, then you'd start, because what you'd end up happening in this case, I think he'd probably relish the challenge. Like, he would let me win the sprint race to start last to see if I could pass everyone, because it doesn't really matter. He's going to win the championship anyway. But if you're in a situation where, it's a competitive championship, you'll see drivers intentionally, sliding down the grid. In fact, you'll see teams just retire the car after one lap in the sprint race. Just pull into the garage, we'll start first. And so I think that's because, teams have gamed the system before. In fact, one of the reasons they have the qualifying format like this is back, in the day, they would have an open session and you just have to do your laps. And this is back when, there was unlimited budgets. They'd have multiple cars for each driver, and they would torque the hell out of one of them they knew would only last a few laps, but they would use that one for qualifying and have a different car for the race, because there's no park for May. You could do whatever you wanted. And they would literally, once qualifying open, put their number one driver in the car, have them do like 3 laps, pull into the garage, and just sit there the rest of the time. Like, why go back out?
Yeah.
So, the F1 teams are just very good at taking advantage of loopholes and gaps. And I feel like half the teams would just be throwing away the sprint race in order to start higher up the grid in the actual race. And it would become really, really messy. They're too good at gaming the system. I think the rationale for doing a separate qualifying, which I do like, is what's happened with the sprint race, because obviously the real race is, the big event and the big points haul and all of that. So what has happened is, everyone's being really cautious in the sprint race, because you make a mistake, you're going to start the actual race way down the grid. If you crash, then you're going to start last. And people don't want to risk that. So I think by allowing, having another qualifying, they can take a little bit more chances in the sprint race, because if you make a mistake, you've just maybe lost a couple of points in the sprint race. You haven't ruined your actual race. And even if there's an accident, there's time to fix it, and I'll fix the car and get it back out for the qualifying. So I think I like that change of the format. Hopefully it results in more competitive sprint racing, because it has been a little processional, because no one's going to risk their car in a starting position in the race to maybe, I think it's the top 8 that get awarded points now. That's 1 point for 8th place. If you're in 8th and you're going up to and you can maybe pass the guy in 7th. You're not going to do that to try to gain a point to like maybe wreck your car and start last in the real race. So
Yeah.
I think this is a good solution. We'll see how it works. Like you said, the track is one that they haven't raced at in a while, so it's an interesting place to guinea pig it. But I do think this format is better. Obviously, the teams have concerns about, there's limits on engine allocations and gearboxes. This is one extra competitive session, because normally with the normal weekend, they 3 practice sessions. They're managing the car, doing limited laps, so you don't want to use up your engines in practice. This is now, there's 4 out of these 5 sessions are competitive. And so where you really need to push the car to, qualify in the sprint race, do well in the sprint race, qualify high for the actual race and the race itself. So it's putting more stress on key components, which will likely lead to engine penalties later in the season. But again, some of the stuff is, matters when it's really competitive. And other times it doesn't. So that's why, now's where you're hoping for some mix up. And speaking of which, we both alluded to this earlier. So in terms of, and apparently we're dangerously close to a Jazz Santana appearance. We'll see. Hopefully we can make it for predictions. But Pirelli picked the middle compounds, C2 to C4, but they admittedly said we're kind of guessing. Yeah, they went safe. Well, they went like, let's hit the middle of the box. Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question, because I'm not sure the answer to this. Are they allowed to skip compounds? Could they have done like C1, C3, C5, or they have to go in sequence, right?
No, they have to go in sequence. And,
okay. So
realistically,
middle,
because think about it. If they really wanted to do something like that, they could go to every track with C1, C3, and C5, like what you said, and you'll have the softest tire possible for the 1 lap, qualifying, and the hardest tire possible for the longevity. But they do it like this so that there's a range, so that there's not always the perfect tire at all at every given time. But.
Yeah, and I think so. The reason I asked that question is like I said, this article is actually, if I scroll up, it's titled like "Starting Over" starting from scratch. They actually do not know how this compound's going to react. So if they've gotten it wrong, again, this is kind of safe because you're playing in the middle. But if they got it wrong and none of them are really usable, if you're allowed to skip between compounds, then that does allow at least you to have 1 tire that way, because this could be a problem. Which again, given the dominance of Max and Red Bull, might be a good thing if there's tire issues and it leads to a little bit of a wacky race. But they've gone with the middle compound. They do not know how the tires are going to react. So, that's going to throw the strategists are going to, and there's only 1 practice session because it's a sprint race. So, the strategists are going to have to figure some things out. Obviously, the sprint race does give you an idea of how you're expecting the tires to react in the race, but this could mix things up a little bit and add a little bit of excitement.
Well, what I would be interested in is if Pirelli's able to bring, let's say, the C5 and the C1 to the track. Like, is that logistically feasible for them to bring that many amount of tires to that track over the weekend? And then, like, say for instance, they go out in P1 and they're running the softs, and the softs are breaking down in 5 laps. Are they able to say, okay, listen, we started off the weekend C5 or C4, 3 and 2, but actually now we're going to go C3, C4, and C5, or vice versa, whichever way it may be.
I
wonder if that's something they can do, or if they have to lock in.
I think they lock in. They're not allowed, because remember, they have to allocate. The teams actually pick their allocation of how many of each compound they want before the weekend starts. I think they're allowed to offset by 1. There's a certain number of each they have to do. And that's why sometimes, they get to the race like, oh, this team has a new set of mediums and our team doesn't, because they took an extra. So they're going to be guessing as well. But no, they have to lock in advance. So this was, whenever the inaugural Miami GP was, I covered that one. And I interviewed the head of Pirelli there, because it was and that was obviously a new circuit at the time for them too. And he talked about all, like, because I asked like, how did you figure out, what tires to use? It's a new tarmac. They've laid it down. I mean, we've all been out to Hard Rock. Like that was not there. They laid tarmac down for the race, and it's still there, but they do resurface it before the race every year. And he was saying, "Oh, we came out here. They laid out like test beds for us to test the tires on. He knew where the asphalt came. Like it came from Georgia. Like he knew all of that stuff." And he's like, they talked about all the testing they did. They tried all these different compounds, so they knew which one to bring. They also took some of the asphalt back to Italy for them to test in their labs. None of that happened here in China. And so it's just crazy, like that they're just gonna, all right, let's go out there and run these things, see what happens. So Pirelli's definitely raised questions about it. So maybe it'll make the race more fun.
Well, I mean, they might be also using a couple of the other tires over the weekend too. If we go into the weather, they.
Well, I was about to say, this might be this might be a bit of a moot point. Good, man, great transition. Really getting into a rhythm here, and then Jazz gonna come here and ruin it. Just kidding, Jazz. Hop in whenever. But yeah, you called it. The weather this Friday through Sunday. This is the weather in Shanghai. We have got moderate temperatures, so the heat shouldn't be an issue, but rain, especially Saturday, which is as we saw earlier, the sprint race and the qualifying for the main event. So could be it could mix things up. And if they haven't tested the dry weather conference, they have not tested the inters or the wets. So again, this could be an interesting weekend if the weather gets involved. Of course, we thought Japan, it was forecast to rain, then it was dry. So it's changeable conditions out there, especially this time of year. So we'll see how the weather reacts, and as the so I haven't run here in 5 years. If it does get wet, how the the track temperature is not going to be ambiently hot, especially with rain. But anyway, these are actually low-ish temperatures for air temperatures. Yes, the track temperature will be a little bit higher, but that'll put them right in the ideal range. They run much hotter than this before they have issues with the tire temperature. But if it's raining, that'll lower the temperature of everything, and also obviously grip becomes an issue. And again, they don't know how the dry tires are going to react. Changeable conditions will throw another wrench into that, and we'll see how they react to that. I guess before we kind of transition to drivers watching on that, Anthony did have a question in the chat here. I don't know if you want to take that, Evan.
Is there a driver in Formula One at the top of the sport right now that you could see transitioning from NASCAR, IndyCar, and winning a championship? Transitioning like one of the top drivers? No, I don't see any of the top drivers right now. The one driver that has been rumored has been a Danny Ricciardo. NASCAR has been trying to get him in one of those cars forever. They feel there's a lot of teams that feel like he would be a good addition because of the international crowd that he would bring. So there has been rumors and talks about that, but he still wants to be a Formula One driver. He doesn't want to leave the sport. IndyCar wise, you have the Romain Grosjeans who transitioned over there after his big crash that he had in Formula One, and we all thought that he was never going to race again after that crash. And he's had a pretty successful career in IndyCar. So far, I don't think he's been at the top of the sport over there. Realistically, there are similarities between Formula One and IndyCar, but they are two completely different animals. You have one series where the cars are basically spec cars, and they all are essentially the same, and you're dealing with the drivers and the skill of those actual drivers, and but essentially, like I said, the cars are all the same. While in Formula One, it's very technically driven, it's very designer driven and engineer driven, and the best teams are going to be the best teams. IndyCar is a great sport. We have one of our other longtime fans is a big IndyCar guy. Shout out to call his name out. I can't remember it right now.
Kane's Cat's Heat.
Kane's Cat's Heat. Yeah,
I know
Kane's
his
Cat's
actual
Heat.
name, but he's never mentioned it on
no,
air,
no,
so I'm not going to. But
for
anyway.
sure. Kane's Cat Heat is a big IndyCar guy, and he is enthralled with the sport, and he's probably the better judge on whether one of these guys could even make that transition. I mean, like we said, these are the best drivers in the world, but whether one of the top guys would ever move over there, I mean, you've seen Fernando Alonso do like the Indy 500, and he's gotten close, but it's such a narrow focused mind thing, to do those oval tracks, to do those oval races, and even the type of tracks that they do in IndyCar. They're similar to Formula One, but it's not the same level. NASCAR is just a completely different animal. The cars are, as they say in Days of Thunder, the cars are twice as big and the tires are half as wide. Those things are sliding and bumping and wrecking and doing all that stuff. Even with these newer generation cars that they have, it's still a completely different animal. Danny Rick would be the one guy that I would say that we could see do a couple one-off races, maybe do a Sonoma road track and stuff like that. But at the top level, warning it's going to be tough for them.
Yeah, I think to your point, if you're at the top of Formula One, you're not going to do IndyCar and NASCAR. It's the people that tend to go from Formula One over to more so IndyCar than NASCAR. But there's been some that have done. Someone like Montoya has done actually all three. They tend to be past their prime in and or failed Formula One drivers that could not stick on the circuit there, that tend to go over. There's a lot of reasons for that. Formula One is considered, in motorsports to be the pinnacle, certainly internationally. So it's a bit of a downgrade reputation-wise to do that. And the ones that have gone over have done, like you said, Evan, reasonably well. And so, like Romain Grosjean was back in the grid stuff and F1 barely hanging onto a seat, and then he's done much better. It's not just him, it's Marcus Ericsson's done well in IndyCar. Takuma Sato couldn't do anything in F1's won the Indy 500, I believe, multiple times. So I mean, frankly, like there's a higher level of competition. And yeah, well, of course, I mean, Lewis Hamilton's probably the greatest driver in history, and then I'm assuming you're talking about Max Verstappen, but they're not going to go. Yes, they could. They're not going to. And I think Jimmy Johnson's Jimmy Johnson's actually a good example because he went to IndyCar from NASCAR and really struggled. NASCAR is a very, I would say, specific talent. Evan, you mentioned ovals. There actually aren't that many ovals left on the IndyCar circuit. There's only a couple. Obviously, with the Indy 500 being one of the most famous races in the world, everyone is focused on that being an oval race. But most of their races are street circuits now, which is why F1 drivers have more started to migrate over as their kind of career dwindles, little opportunities dwindle in F1. But NASCAR is predominantly ovals. There's a couple of road circuits, but they're predominantly ovals. It's a very different skill, and it is other drivers have been able to transfer to NASCAR a lot more easily than their drivers have been able to translate outside of that. So yeah, I think there's no doubt Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen could do well in NASCAR, but there's also no doubt they would not consider it.
I was gonna say there was a video that was flying around. I think it was a few years back. I don't know what show or production it was on, but it was Lewis Hamilton driving NASCAR around Watkins Glen up in upper state New York. And that's one of the, I think it was even back when he was still with McLaren, how long ago it was that he did.
Yeah, because I feel like he switched cars with Jeff Gordon or something, and they did a.
Yeah, exactly. It was that he switched cars with Jeff Gordon, and you could hear Jeff Gordon commenting, and you hear Jeff Gordon commenting on the video saying he's calling him, but he's staying out there. He was having fun. And I think that's really what it is you would see these NASCAR, these Formula One guys jump in those NASCARs and be like, hey, this is like a fun, car to drive around for me. But it's not at that top level, at the top guys in NASCAR, they've been doing that for years. They're honing a skill. It's like it would be like a football player going to a bowling alley. Yeah, he could sling that bowling ball down the lane and probably get a few strikes, but it's not the same thing as a skilled bowler who's going to sit there and get a 300 game. So at the end of the day, it's two completely different disciplines. It's two completely different things. It'd be cool to watch. Like I said, somebody like a Danny Rick who just has such a big following outside of his actual racing. To do something like that, I think that'd be a big draw. You got like Danica Patrick is a good example of it. She was an IndyCar driver for a long time, had a successful-ish career in IndyCar, went to NASCAR, just couldn't keep up at all. The only driver that I've ever seen that's ever been super successful going from open wheel to NASCAR has been Tony Stewart. Tony Stewart was an open wheel guy for a long time, and left IndyCar.
Montoya did okay in NASCAR also. He hung around for a while.
He did okay, but he was never a championship driver. He was a top 5, top 10 guy. I don't think he ever won a championship in IndyCar or in NASCAR.
He did in kart, the predecessor to like
he did in kart.
He did in kart. He didn't in F1 and didn't in IndyCar. All right, let's welcome this dude and then we can do predictions.
Anthony says AJ Foyt did.
You missed the.
You were talking about in the 60s.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole different. The IndyCar used to be an F1 race. If you want to go back far enough.
Yeah, exactly.
The lights went out and Jazz missed the start signal, but he's here now. Right in time for predictions, my man.
When it matters, I'm here for you guys. All right.
Just real quick on this, like tires is a whole other topic in F1, and they intentionally wear tires out at different rates to make the strategy more difficult. Yeah. So no, not at all surprised. Those aren't built to last. They're built to wear out strategically to challenge the teams. All right. Jazz, welcome.
Hello. What's up? It's been a crazy day, man.
Yeah. So we talked about the sprint race and well, as we do predictions, any thoughts on the format now with the qualifying for a separate qualifying for the race? The sprint race is no longer qualifying, and will you be up at 3 a.m. to watch the sprint race?
Yeah, absolutely not.
I will.
Yeah, I know you will.
I know. You'll be. I gotta remember to mute my phone this time so I can get some sleep.
Send us the video like you did last time.
Sorry.
Listen, it's my fault. It's not your fault. You can text me whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Now, if I read it at 3 a.m., it's a different story.
Yeah, so. That's fine. That's on me.
Yeah. Sure. I actually like it. I like that there's a different qualifying. I know that it's just, it's something more it's something extra to watch. But aside from that, right? From the casual fan, it's something extra to watch if you're actually up at 3 a.m. or if you're on the other side of the world watching it. But I like it because I think that if you base it off of what happens in sprint qualifying, I don't know. Maybe they're holding back in sprint qualifying. Maybe they're using different tires, different tire strategy. I don't know, right? It could change. And so I like the fact that there's the difference between the two. I think sometimes some of the guys don't take the sprint as serious as the actual race itself. So I'm good with it. I think it's good. If that makes sense. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. See you guys later.
So so Anthony, we do top 3 and surprise prediction. Speaking of which, who wants to go first over here?
Ooh, me.
Go Jazz.
Okay, cool.
You're gonna test how many languages you can say Charles then?
No, Zhou Guanyu is gonna win. Okay,
oh, man, home field advantage.
Home field. He's got the home field advantage, and he's placed P20.
Hey, Oscar Piastri is 1/16 Chinese.
I think
Oscar Piastri is 1/16 Chinese.
That's interesting. That 1/16 is it might help him, but not because of anything else, but the fact that he's got a better car than Zhou. Sure. No, I mean I think it's Max again. The only thing that's gonna stop him from winning any of these races is reliability, right? If he doesn't qualify, doesn't finish, right, or doesn't even start, whatever it is. Um, but yeah, I think it's Max. Um, it's hard to go against the Red Bulls or the Ferraris at this point in the season, just because they're just driving so well in the actual race itself. So I'm probably gonna go Max this time around. It seems like Carlos and Charles are flip flopping races sometimes, so I'll go Charles on this one at P2. Give me Checo P3. So we'll go Max, Charles, and Checo. 1, 2, 3. I know it's very boring. It's a very boring result, but it's kind of like the obvious one. But anyways,
And
I'm trying to win. I'm trying to win at least one prediction, and then I'll just go off the rails on the rest. Okay.
Well, since
I'll go a la Vish. I'll go a la Vish on the rest.
Look, man. I mean, I create rare moments of brilliance when, like,
that's great.
Who would have thought that, like, me saying Logan Sargent would finish ahead of Albon on pace would result in them throwing Logan Sargent out of the weekend before the race.
Listen,
I mean, come on, man. You can't beat
fantastic.
that. And the one weekend in George Russell DNF, he on the last lap just loses control. I mean, look, I have my moments of accidental, completely wrong brilliance. So
yeah, what are you gonna do?
But given your very vanilla top three, what is your surprise pick?
Oh shoot, that's right. My surprise pick will be Joe in the points. How about that?
Oh, there you go.
We'll go Joe in the points. That's pretty surprised considering how bad he is right now. How bad that Sauber is right now. Period. Jesus. So we'll go Joe in the points. Yeah, I like that. What about you, Evan? Go ahead.
So for the race, I'm going Max. I'm going to go Max. I'm going to go Chico, but I'm going to put Lewis at number 3. I think that this track, like me and Vish were talking about earlier, it kind of lends itself to these drivers that know this track. I think that it might be a wet weekend, which might help out, with a little bit more chaos, a little bit more craziness. But I think that, the drivers who have raced here before, not just been in the simulator, they haven't driven here since 2019, we were talking about earlier.
Wait, well, then in that case, give Alonso the win. If it's going to rain, give Alonso
the win. Well, yeah. But I think that you go Max, you go Checo, you go Lewis Hamilton for his maiden, right? Is this going to be would this be his maiden podium of the year, I believe? I think that'll help him out. I think that this will be a good track for him. I think it'll be a good race for him. It's been 2 weeks off. Mercedes has been talking about how they've been trying to update that car and make it a little bit better, make it a little bit more competitive. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's my top 3. My surprise, I think I'm gonna go with somebody. I'm gonna go with Lando Norris to win the sprint.
Okay, I was gonna actually jazz at this down for a second. I still have him backstage, but I was gonna ask if anyone had any like kind of changing predictions of the sprint, but you just derail me by throwing a big curveball in there. So
I'm gonna go Lando winning the sprint.
Control. They said they were in damage control mode this week, but you got Lando stepping up and winning the sprint.
Well, I mean, think about it. The only other driver to win the sprint last year was Oscar Piastri. He won a sprint race last year. So I think, the McLarens, they're going to go hard no matter what. You're going to see them try, the hardest that they can. And I think that the sprint races, you'll see Max, you don't always see Max go at his full tilt on those sprint races because he just knows he wants to win the race. And you could see somebody like Lando taking advantage of that and going out and winning that sprint race. And I think that'd be a good momentum for them going into the actual race, to maybe get a top 5 or something like that. But yeah, I'm gonna go Lando to win the sprint race is my surprise.
So your sister's got Max, Sainz, and Norris, and Anthony has Bottas winning the sprint race, which We'll put to one side.
That would be unbelievable.
19-car pileup would be very entertaining, and him somehow coming through clean on the other side.
Yeah.
All right.
Is Valtteri's sister?
Valerie is probably
She's
the
racing
auto
WCs.
correcting. He does not have the finish
I'm just messing with you.
the finish keyboard on his phone there.
And by the way, Carly, I think you had it right.
Saint in second place.
I think you had it right, Carly.
I was about to say Jazz calls him
Saint Science.
yeah, he might be calling him former F1 driver in a year.
Oh my god.
All right, everyone else picked Max.
He'll have a seat.
I can't do it.
He'll have
a seat. Come on, Fish.
There's no way that man doesn't have a seat.
Does he want to drive at the back of the grid? Anyway, that's a future show topic. Anyway, everyone picked Max. Well, I can't pick Max, so I'll go with Saint Carlos as number 1. And then
oh, I like it. Okay, I'll take it.
Checo as second, and Hamilton third.
All right.
And then the only way this would possibly happen is Max DNF. So that's my surprise, because the car finishes, he's going to be 30 seconds up the road from everyone else. So
that's the truth.
The only way
turn one incident in the rain.
Turn one incident. Maybe he and Charles crash into each other. That's why Charles is missing from my. Or I guess Charles is missing from my.
Charles.
Yeah, it's missing from my list there. So anyway, those are that is my pick. So again, the race is sort of Sunday morning, but really Saturday night if you want to stay up, 3 a.m. Qualifying is Saturday at 3 a.m. Sprint race is technically Friday night at 11:30 p.m.
Gotcha.
All right. Anyone have anything else before we wrap up? We'll obviously be back next week to talk about this. And we're getting close to Miami weekend. The home race. The home race.
Oh my God, yeah. What, 2-3 weeks? Yeah.
It's 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
They pack up and head to
2 weeks. Cinco de Mayo week, right?
Yep. May 3rd to 5th.
I might be going. I don't know yet exactly, but there's a possibility I might be going to the race.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure. To everybody who's listening in my family or whatever, I'm not 100% sure if I am.
Yeah, you're gonna get some calls now, man.
Yeah. See, look at the comments, Carly. We might.
Look, man, this is your cross to bear. So you can work that out. I think you have like 10 ticket requests. You're like a player that makes the Final Four. I got 100 ticket requests now. You should have said that out over. I covertly planned it.
Yeah. There's a possibility being in the restaurant business might help me out for once. So,
nice.
Oh boy,
we'll see how that works out.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. All right. Well,
all right.
That's it for today.
Yep, and stay tuned on this very same network. We're going to talk about. The Canes.
This is gonna be a short talk.
Yeah, what's left of the Canes baseball program? Coming up next on Canes on Deck, so stay tuned for that.
See you guys. Yep.